So I'm going to talk about something real quick. Picard Season 3 just recently ended. It is a phenomenal season of television. It is infinitely better than the first two seasons, and it's not even particularly close. The first two seasons were odd. They weren't exactly Star Trek. It felt more like Blade Runner, but with just Picard in it for some reason. It didn't really feel like Star Trek. They weren't on a Star Trek, they weren't on a Starfleet vessel, they weren't, following any protocols or anything. It really had nothing to do with Trek other than Patrick Stewart was in it. A good actor, but I don't think the first two seasons really captured my imagination and my attention that much. Season 3 did. Season 3 had a brand new showrunner who was like they worked on Season 2 but then became the showrunner by Season 3. And again, phenomenal job taking really what could have been a lazy, just cameo-riddled season that was just all about, oh, remember this thing from the past? So do I! And then turning it into something that was actually like a good season of television was a great job. And it got me thinking about the Star Trek series as a whole. I have seen episodes, bits and pieces of Star Trek TOS, the original series, but I haven't ever sat down to watch it, first episode to last episode, just because, it's a little outdated and all of the problems that come with that. Star Trek The Next Generation, I also haven't ever sat down to watch beginning to end, which is odd because, in my estimation, it's the best Star Trek series. I think the cast is phenomenal. I think the characters themselves are probably the most well-rounded cast of any of the series, and it really feels the most. I know this is a weird saying, but it feels the most like Star Trek to me. It has everything that I would want in a Trek series. And I know the beginning of it, the first season and a half, are kind of odd. Gene Roddenberry was still the creative voice of it, who made the original series, and he had a couple of things that he wanted to do in this that didn't really work for television. Like, he had a whole mandate of none of the cast could ever have a fight amongst each other, because that wouldn't be. In the future of this world, it would be frowned upon that you would have these kind of quarrels. And it's I get the vision, but for a television show, that means how do you write conflict without just it being a villain of the week type thing? And also, even if you do have a villain of the week, it's the characters' interactions amongst each other don't feel human. They feel very stilted, which is the problem with season 1 of that show. It's very performative. It's very feels more like a stage play than it does a regular season of TV. But as the show went on, it became less rigid. Roddenberry kind of gave up creative control of it for a while, and it went to other people who really fixed the show and made it the pop culture icon that it is today. And I love that show, and I really want to sit down to watch it beginning to end. And it's weird because there are now 3 different endings for that show. It ended originally with a 2-part episode, and it was a phenomenal ending that everyone, universally liked. Except that's not the end anymore, because they went on to make 4 movies. It's the only one of the 90s era Trek to get movies made of them. And the 4th one, Star Trek Nemesis, is the end. Was it supposed to be the end? That's up for debate, but it was the end the last time that we saw this group, which is a weird end, but hot take, that movie's pretty good. I don't know why people have a problem with it. But that was the end of the cast, and it was sad, because we were never going to get to see them interact again. Until Picard. Season 1 of Picard had a couple of former actors in it from the former series. You have Data, Brent Spiner, who came back to play a version of Data and also some different characters. And you also had Jonathan Frakes, who played William Riker. Heading into Season 3, all of the trailers was just, oh, this is just the reunion of everyone. Everyone came back, including Brent Spiner, including Jonathan Frakes, including Geordie LaForge, who I can't think of the actor right now, but I swear I know it. But the point is, everyone from the original show was back. And it culminated in the last episode of Picard Season 3, Episode 10, which was, again, a phenomenal episode, a great send-off to the characters that might actually be a send-off this time. So now you have 3 different endings for this show, and you get more and more of these characters interacting with each other. That's something that some of the other Trek shows from the 90s don't get the pleasure of having. Star Trek Voyager, which in my opinion is the 2nd best Star Trek show of all time, again, hot takes here. I really like that show, and I really like the characters in it. I think they were really good. I really like the concept in general, but they never got movies made of them, so you really just have the series to look back on, and unfortunately the Voyager series didn't end on the strongest note. Deep Space Nine, which a lot of people really liked at the time, and again, another hot take, I really hate that show. It's not a good show. It's the worst Trek show that's ever been made, and I might do a review of that series eventually so that I can lay out some of my thoughts on it more clearly, but I don't like that show. There are a couple of characters that are okay, specifically Odo I remember being really good, but a lot of the cast they just stole from Next Generation. They stole Worf, they stole O'Brien, who was a weird choice because he wasn't exactly the biggest character on TNG anyway. Deep Space Nine never got movies, and then the final show of the 90s/2000s era Trek was Star Trek Enterprise, which is an odd show, to be sure. I've watched it. It's weird because it doesn't exactly feel like Trek, but it doesn't exactly not feel like Trek. It's not like the Picard problem, where it's just a random sci-fi show. It definitely is Trek-inspired, but it's weird because it's so early days in the universe, and also the feeling of the episodes don't evoke 90s Trek in the same way that Voyager or hell, even Deep Space Nine does, because this is the intro to TNG, we all know it.
To boldly go where no one has gone before.
Not playing the whole thing because it's going to get copyright struck. This is the intro to Voyager. Fantastic intro, and then this is the intro to Deep Space Nine. See, all of these have something in common. They're all orchestral, they're all look at the cool, space shots and whatever, and shots of the ship. And then look at Enterprise's opening.
It's been a long road, getting from there to here. It's been a long time, but my time is finally near.
Who the hell decided it was a good idea to put lyrics behind it? And not only that, just take a song that already existed and put it as it's weird. It doesn't, it's odd. And it got blasted at the time, and it's gotten blasted since, and it is very weird. But I do like the characters on Enterprise. I like Archer. I like Trip, who a lot of people have said in the past should have been the captain in place of Archer, and honestly, I could see that happening. And there are a lot of good characters on Enterprise, but it never got the recognition that it deserved. There are definite problems with the show. It is not a perfect show by any means, and it doesn't really even compare to the other, the Voyager and Next Generation. But I would argue that it's better than Deep Space Nine. This video is going to get a lot of hate comments. Anyway, this whole rambling is really to tell you that I have a serious idea. I'm going to review every Star Trek show. I'm going to start with the Next Generation. And the reason why I'm starting with Next Generation instead of TOS is, one, Next Generation's a better show, but two, it's the end of an era with Picard, ending that, and TOS has been ended for such a long time, and you have the movies, and, there were 6 of the original films, which 4 of them are good, but that's been ended for such a long time, and everyone has told those stories before. Next Generation really just ended. And I think it's a love letter to what the cast and what the writing was able to do with this show. So stay tuned next time while I take a look at Next Generation's very first episode, Encounter at Fairpoint. Goodbye!